Hi, I'm Eula Fritz, and welcome to Ask the Chief. Today we're going live, and we want your questions. Call now at 310-458-4950, and we'll get you on the air. So let's get started by introducing Jacqueline A. Seabrooks, the Santa Monica Chief of Police. Chief Seabrooks, thanks for joining us today.
Well, hi, Eula. It's good to be here.
Wonderful. We have a few questions for you. We'll get started.
Okay, I'm sure that there's going to be a whole ton of questions that come in over the course of the hour or so.
Absolutely, and we have a whole bunch of callers coming in. We have a few emails to you, so let's get started.
All right.
What made you decide to go into law enforcement?
Wow. Well, there's a story. I was 19 years old. I was in college. Probably not the most attentive student, but a pretty decent student. And one of my professors came up and gave me an application, said, here's something you probably will be good at, but you probably won't make it because it's real stringent. And someone daring me in that way was all I needed. So I switched schools, needless to say, began studying criminal justice, found I loved it. Applied for the position that he'd given me the paperwork for, and I ended up as a state police officer roughly a year later. And a year after that, I ended up as a Santa Monica Police Department, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Wow, awesome. So tell us, what have been some of the highlights of being chief of Santa Monica PD?
The welcome I got back, both from the community and the police department and city staff. I mean, it's been great. Being chief is a unique position. There's only one for the police department, and then I'm one of 44 police chiefs in the county and one of 24 women statewide. So it comes with its own kind of uniqueness and cachet. But by the same token, the highlights are the ability to be able to make significant policy changes that impact the perceptions and reality of safety for an entire community that is Santa Monica.
Oh, okay. So with that said, what are some of the challenges?
Well, the challenges are, the police department is that one element of government where we're out 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we have to manage people's expectations to, as I say, keep it real in terms of what is the appropriate role and responsibility of a police department. But as service providers, we have to get out, we have to do that which we can to make the community safe, and that's our primary mandate first and foremost.
Awesome. If there were one thing, knowing what you know now, as chief, right?
Yeah.
You could go back and tell yourself when you were starting your career in law enforcement, what would it be?
Is this that question that I hear a lot about? What would you say to your younger self?
Yeah, what would you tell yourself when you were 19, when you had that application in your hand, you're just like, okay, did you know like someday, wow, I'm going to be chief?
Oh, heck no. Back then, women weren't even... It may have been a possibility to be a chief. It was never in my mindset because in the agencies I worked in, I didn't see that as a role model. I mean, even Santa Monica, we've evolved. When I was a new police officer, there were no women supervisors.
Wow.
So it was not even a thought. But to get to the question, what would I say to my younger self? Take time. I think if I were doing it over again, knowing what I know, I might not come into this business until I was 25. 30.
Really?
Yeah, because I think young people, 19 years old, you need to experience what a 19-year-old experiences. And unfortunately, while I can say, I should say fortunately, I can say that I've had a very, very beneficial career. It's been very rewarding.
Absolutely.
There's also something to be said about just kind of going off to college, doing those college things, being in the sororities, just enjoying life, doing a little bit of traveling, where when I was 19, 20, I was a police officer, making police officer type decisions, learning about myself and developing as a professional very early. So in some respects, I would tell myself, hey, slow down. There's going to be plenty of time.
I take it that you were probably very mature for your age at 19 then.
Hear tell. And if the world works in a certain way, I have to make sure that I don't revert to 19-year-old behavior now that I'm 50-something.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
But you look good.
Well, thank you. That's half the battle, and it's the battle talent, trust me.
Right. Well, here in the city of Santa Monica, we have a lot of high-profile events which draw huge numbers of people.
Yes.
And so what does your team do to prepare for such events, for like GLOW that we had last weekend?
Okay. Well, we don't just start preparing within the week prior to the event. Sometimes for events that are very large-scale, like GLOW, like the marathon, things like that, the preparation actually occurs almost a year in advance.
Wow.
And the preparation involves several things.
Okay.
Understanding the parameters of the event, who the event is targeting in terms of who's going to be the audience, what are the numbers, and then what's been the experience of similar events, if there are similar events in other communities, or what's been our history with the event in previous iterations of that event. For example, GLOW, it happens every 2 years. So we look at that, and then we determine what training we need to have. And we make sure that in the intervening period of time, we provide our officers with that training, and not just our police officers, but also our critical civilian staff. We also make sure that we have all of the resources that we need to have on hand. We work with our partner law enforcement agencies because we need to have them in a standby role just in case.
Sure.
We make sure that we have done all of the things necessary to ensure the operation of a safe event, which may mean bringing in sniffing dogs, particularly, unfortunately, in this day and age, making sure that we have the appropriate undercover personnel, that we've made the appropriate safety routes so that if something should happen, the evacuation plans are in place. We do a whole array of things. And then there's the command and control by the officers and management staff that will be on hand. I am out there just watching and observing my people as they do what they go about doing, and I'm just there to provide that subtle guiding influence.
Sure,
subtle. Subtle. and then two, because I've been away for I've only been back now for a year, so in the 4.5 years, I want to see how the Santa Monica Police Department has evolved to deal with the contemporary events that we face. And I have to say, I'm real proud of my people.
I know, and I really didn't realize that you go back that far, a year, to really prep for events like that. We're
preparing for the LA Marathon now. We're talking about it. We're looking at lessons learned. We're looking at the circumstances, very regrettably, that occurred in Boston, and making sure that we take into consideration any new information that comes to the fore that we need to incorporate in our public safety approach. We work closely with our fire department partners to make sure that we present the best public safety blanket that we can, but it has to also feel comfortable to the participants. They don't want we don't want people to feel, oh my God, there's such an oppressive safety presence here. That by its very nature makes us feel like it's unsafe. People need to feel safe, but they don't need to know all that's happening in the background. They just need to come to Santa Monica and have a great time.
Oh, exactly. Well, guess what, Chief? We have a call.
No kidding, really?
We do. We have Tate on the line. Tate, welcome.
Hi, Tate.
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry, Kate.
Ooh.
That was my fault. I apologize, Kate. Kate, you're on live with Ask the Chief. Go ahead with your question.
Brooks, I just want to say that I think that Santa Monica drivers are the worst drivers anywhere. And I really feel unsafe when I'm walking around. So I know the city's always telling us to walk and not drive, but I always feel like I'm going to get hit by a car because, they're always like honking at me to walk across faster. I feel like they're not paying attention. So why don't you have more people out there enforcing or giving these crazy drivers tickets or getting them to slow down? How can you make it safer for people to walk in Santa Monica?
Well, let me say this. First of all, pedestrian safety is the ultimate responsibility of us all. But as a pedestrian, I would encourage you to think back to the times when you were a kid and you may have heard stop, look both ways, listen, and then cross. Make sure that that's part of the philosophy that you use. And then equally understand that the police department is out there engaging in aggressive enforcement. Equally, we're engaging in a series of public safety messages that help to promote safe vehicle operation, because we understand as we make Santa Monica a walkable city, it has to be a safe walkable city. You can certainly report errant drivers if you see them doing things that make you nervous, and let us know about that. And if we have an officer in the area, we'll certainly come out for enforcement. But the bigger component piece of pedestrian safety is education. It's a three-pronged approach. It's education, it's enforcement, and it's engineering. The engineering component the city is working on as it makes the community much more walkable. The enforcement capacity falls right to the police department, and that's our role, and our motorcycle officers, our police officers are responsible for doing that. And then equally the education component is our obligation to make sure that our community's members, as well as the visitors to the city, as well as people who just happen to be the occasional person in Santa Monica, that they understand that it is a safe community to walk in, but you do have to be careful.
It's very true. You always have to look Both ways. I know I do, definitely. And I walk to almost all the meetings that I go to. So, yeah, you definitely have to kind of do your part, too, being a citizen in the community.
Yes, you do.
Really quick, if you can, what do you think are your most pressing issues facing the community right now? And so what are your top priorities with that?
Well, my top priorities are to fight crime and the fear of crime and disorder. And we do that in a myriad of ways. We push a very strong anti-crime agenda within the police department. You hear a lot about CompStat when you hear police chiefs and others talking. We don't use CompStat, but we use a version of CompStat. And that means that we look at daily, we look at data that tells us what's going on in our community, what crimes have occurred, what trends are we seeing, and we deploy resources to address those things. And then we have, the routine calls for service and the like that generate a response. And so we're very clear about our crime fighting mandate. We have a crime impact team that works diligently to reduce crime. We have our routine patrol officers. We have the extra eyes and ears that our civilian field personnel provide. We ask that other city departments that have field responsibilities let us know when they come across things that are untoward. We beseech our community to do the same thing, because that collective effort helps to keep the crime rate down in our community. In our community, realizing that there is a level of crime, it's as safe as it's been since the mid-1950s.
Awesome.
So that is the first mandate. Then, as Kate pointed out, traffic. We understand how dense traffic is in the community. We understand that there's lots of bicycles now, there's lots of vehicles, there's lots of pedestrians. And with that mix comes the potential for conflict in the form of collisions, quite frankly. So our staff is dedicated to enhancing traffic safety. Our motorcycle officers are out and about engaging in enforcement, when you're the person on the receiving end of that, nobody likes getting a ticket. Nobody likes seeing that red light flashing in their rearview mirror.
Not at all.
Nobody likes that, but we do it contrary to popular opinion. We don't do it to raise revenue. We do it to raise awareness, to promote safety, so that folks like Kate and other folks who are in our community can feel safe while they're walking, bicycling, and quite frankly, in driving.
So important.
That's right. So that's a huge component. And then we have our youth services section of things, where we want to make sure that we emphasize the young people of the future, and that we create opportunities for engagement for young people. We create opportunities for them not to be enticed into gang activity, because even though this is Santa Monica and that is not as strong an influence as it may be in other communities, we want to keep it that way. I remember a time when that wasn't the case, so we've made some significant gains, and we want to keep that. So there's things we have to do to create those opportunities in tandem with the programs that the city is operating, to make sure that the youthful experience in our community is a positive one. So those are the three priorities, and some. There's a few more, but those are the top three.
Okay, awesome. I love them. Being in the LA area, you must interact frequently with other city police departments. What is the working relationship like with SMPD and other Southland agencies?
It's actually very good. We're highly regarded by our law enforcement colleagues, not just in the localized area, but across the state, across the country, quite frankly. We're an international destination, and so we're known as that. The nice part about it, though, is I have an opportunity quite frequently to engage with my chief colleagues. Next week I'll be speaking at a law enforcement conference that'll be attended by police representatives from up and down the state. On a monthly basis, I meet with all of the county's chiefs. There's 44 of us in total, and we exchange ideas and information and strategies and the like. On a monthly basis, I meet with the South Bay, which is more of a regional grouping of chiefs, and we talk about issues and circumstances that we're facing on a more localized regional basis. So the relationships are very strong, and in that, we don't just talk on the municipal level. I interface with the federal law enforcement entities that we routinely deal with, the FBI, the DEA, ICE, etc. I do the same thing with the California Highway Patrol, UCLA PD, the DA's office. There's an array of law enforcement agencies that, in order to make sure that we are a good partner, those relationships have to be maintained and nurtured. When June 7th came, those resources were brought full bear on the concern, and with their help, we addressed it.
Okay. Tell us about some of the resources the city has access to, like most people wouldn't know about, the bomb sniffing dogs, the mounted unit, some of those components.
I think, a lot of people see the obvious things that we have, our black and white cars,
Right.
Our civilian field personnel who are on bicycles, who may be in the white cars like our park rangers, our parking enforcement officers, things like that. But we have a whole array of other services that we provide. Most recently, we had one of our chaplains retire after 35 years of service with the police department, voluntary service with the police department.
Okay.
And that speaks to this helping to meet the spiritual needs of our employee group, but also members of our community who find themselves in difficult circumstances.
Okay.
So that's something that I think a lot of people weren't aware of. As you mentioned, our mounted unit. We have 5 horses that we particularly use when we're having large-scale events that are likely to draw large-scale crowds.
Right.
And that's not just on the beach, but I mean in parks, in the local downtown area, or in other areas of the city.
Oh, okay.
Coming up around the Christmas holidays, you'll see the horses out on Montana and on Main Street, and you'll see them operating in the downtown a bit more frequently.
That's always fun. We get to see those.
Yes.
We have a call for you.
Okay.
It's Michael on the line. Michael, you're on live with Ask the Chief.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Michael, hi.
Hi. I wanted to know, I've recently discovered that at my business on 14th Street, that I think there's a homeless person living up on the roof, and I'm wondering, he's not there during the day, or she, but I can tell they've been there for quite a while. And I was wondering, what's my course of action? What should I do?
Okay, your first course of action is to contact the police department and let us know through the more official channels the address of your business. We will work with you on making sure that an officer comes out during the hours where I'm going to presume your business is closed so that we can check the roof and interact with this person. We'll talk with you about having a trespass letter on file, and what that does is it allows us to make arrests of people we find on your property without having to directly contact you at the moment that we're interacting with the person, whether they're on your roof or you're on the ground level of your property. And what that does is that letter is generally good for about a 30-day period, and it allows us, while we check your premises for that 30-day period, to be sure that those folks who aren't supposed to be on your property, we engage them and where appropriate, put them on notice and then arrest them. And that may sound harsh, but what it does is it's what's appropriate. It's what needs to happen. And then 2, we can link that person with services, because I would presume that someone who is sleeping on your roof probably needs some other more in-depth assistance. And we have resources in the city that to whom we can make referrals, and we can do that to ensure that there's a continuum of care for that individual.
Now, what about their belongings? I'm concerned that I don't want to get rid of anything that might be of value to them, and be responsible for that.
And that's why you would call us. We have a homeless liaison program, and what happens is the officers from that program can come out. We would take custody of the property. We actually have a storage facility where we would book that property in, and we retain it for a period of time to give the person to whom it belongs an opportunity to reclaim the property, because they do have rights associated with that property. So we would work with you on the full gamut of making sure that your property isn't utilized by people to whom you didn't extend the privilege. Equally, as I said, we'll link them with services if and where it's appropriate, to be sure that there's a continuity of assistance for them, but more importantly, to give you peace of mind that there's not someone on your roof who shouldn't be.
Great. Thanks so much.
Okay, and if you want to receive information about the Homeless Liaison Program, please call our police department at 310-458-8426 and ask the front desk officer to connect you with officers from our Homeless Liaison Program. Our lead officer is Officer Robert Martinez.
Great. Now, is that the phone number the same as on the website?
It may be a variant. I just gave you the general information number to the police department, and then if you ask the desk officer to transfer you to Officer Martinez, of the Homeless Liaison Program, he or she will know exactly who to refer you to.
Thank you.
You're most welcome.
Thank you for the call, Michael. We just want to remind all those that are out there watching that with your questions or anything that you may have or any concerns that you may have for the chief, this is your opportunity to call. So give us a call out here, 310-458-4950 here at City TV and live in Santa Monica with the Chief of Police. You don't have this opportunity all the time, people, so please call in.
You gotta be careful, you're gonna be inundated with calls now.
I know, right? But that's a good thing. As
No,
I say,
that's
that's
true.
a good problem to have. But we really want you guys to call and get a chance. This is, this is one in a lifetime opportunity that you get a chance to actually pick up the phone and call and actually speak to the chief. So I know pretty soon we're going to be taking a quick little short break, and then we have some more questions for you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Hey! I don't know you.
Some problems are just too big to ignore. But don't take matters into your own hands.
Hey, lady!
With the help of a mediator, you can find a solution. Mediators are volunteer professionals who can help you resolve issues without the high cost of legal fees.
Wonder if he's single.
Hey, I saw him first.
Call us or reach out on the web if you'd like to volunteer or donate.
Good morning, sunshine.
If he were, he'd tell you, right? You're too healthy to be. He didn't look sick.
What if you weren't safe every time?
What if he's sleeping with his ex? What if it broke? If you are HIV positive, what happens next?
You don't have to live with Mr. Doubt. Common Ground offers free testing and care for HIV and STDs, including hepatitis. Just stop by or call us.
It's time you know.
Experience Highways Performance Space and Gallery.
I knew my journey would lead me to a place
where I'd find a highway that I could travel to the beat of my own drum. Right out the storm, 95 Joey died, but Deadly was born. And there would be no limits to the vibrancy of my performance.
Join us each week at Highways Performance Space and Gallery and live without limits. Log on to highwaysperformance.org.
Oh, hi, Rosa.
Is it time for Mama to have our baby?
No, sweetie, it's time for you to get a checkup.
A checkup? Can I go, please?
The services of Women in Children's Hospital are integrated into the new LAC USC Healthcare Network, where superior medical professionals provide clinical research and complete patient care for your community.
Ouch.
Our staff is dedicated to you and your family.
Welcome back. You're back live on Ask the Chief. So again, just want to let everyone know out there in Santa Monica, give us a call. The number is 310-458-4950. So go ahead and give us a call so you can talk to the chief live and in person. So Chief, we did have a few people that emailed some of their questions into us, so I'm going to read a couple.
Okay.
This is from Jane, who actually likes to walk in Santa Monica. Santa Monica has so many bike riders who don't seem to be obeying the law. They're everywhere and they don't know what they're supposed to be doing. Can you do more enforcement in this area?
Of course, but what we've discovered though is that a lot of our bicyclists are from out of the area. A lot of our bicyclists are people who are visiting our beautiful community from other parts of the world, quite frankly. So it's important that in addition to enforcement, we engage in a level of education. And so what we're doing is we're working with our downtown bicycle entities, with our Visitors Bureau to make sure that those who would visit our communities, those who would rent bicycles from the bicycle stations would know what the rules are. For example, it's not appropriate for, in fact it's a violation of the law, to ride a bicycle on the sidewalk. So what we do is we're working to make sure that that message is communicated to folks so that perhaps we don't have to engage in enforcement. We like to use enforcement for the most egregious of the violations.
Sure.
Equally, what we're doing is, I just spoke to the Parks and Rec Commission not too long ago to talk about modifying aspects of our current ordinance and propose to them to make a recommendation to council to do that, to create an allowance for people 14 and under to ride on the sidewalks, because while we promote bicycle safety, we realize that for members of our community whose young people are riding bicycles to school, that having them in the street when they're 10, 11, 12 is a scary proposition.
Right.
So by enabling 14 and under to ride bicycles on the sidewalk, we promote bicycle safety coupled with bicycle education. This past summer, I volunteered a little bit with the Boys and Girls Club, and they had a bicycle build a bicycle campaign. And part of that was also an educational opportunity. As we built bicycles and gave them to young people, we also partnered up to do some bicycle education.
Okay.
So everything that we do in the realm of safety, pedestrian safety, bicycle safety, motorist safety, has an educational component, because that's crucial. Enforcement by itself isn't going to resolve the problem,
right.
But strong education coupled with enforcement really helps us to make some inroads.
Gotcha. We have a call on the line. Courtney, are you there? You're on live with Ask the Chief.
Yes, I am.
Hi, Courtney.
Hi. My question was pertaining to the SMC College. I am a student there, and I just wanted to know, there was a shooter on campus just this past summer, and I wanted to know how safety was going to be ensured from here on out, and, if I heard shots, gunshots in the future, what were the best tactics to take in that situation?
Okay. Let me give a little background. Back on June 7th, we did have a circumstance of a spree shooter in our community, and he traversed through our community and then ended up on Santa Monica College campus. And then at a point, the police department took action and neutralized the threat that he presented. With that in mind, there are a number of things that people can do, not just when confronted potentially with an active shooter where it occurs on a campus, but in any place. Because these days, it seems as though, regretfully, we're hearing more and more of this kind of activity.
Right.
And there's that notion that initially you shelter in place, but equally you have to be prepared to fight, because it's very difficult to say, yes, you're hearing, a level of carnage, quite frankly, happening, and to stay put underneath the table.
Right.
Every situation is different. People will have to make individualized decisions about how they're going to do something like that and what they're going to do. The police department in Santa Monica and at Santa Monica College, we train consistently. In fact, a number of our officers from both departments are currently undergoing refinement training in exactly this area. It's the active engagement scenario, rapid response deployment, things like that. Because in the years since Columbine, we've learned a number of things.
Right.
We've learned that locking down a scenario and waiting for the SWAT team does not.
Right.
It's not beneficial for anyone. So what we do is we train our officers to engage in small groups. They get together and they go in and directly confront the threat. The newest round of training that's being put out for members of the public and through their employment sources and the like indicates that it's beneficial to shelter in place for a few minutes, but if it looks like this person is a direct threat and they're there, to aggressively attack. Pick up chairs, fire extinguishers, whatever you can to defend yourself. So there's really no one pat solution for the question that she asks. It's one of those things that what you have to do is be prepared, be cognizant of your surroundings, and then have a plan in mind for what you're going to do. And then equally, when you are safe, let people know what's going on, and equally notify the police, and preferably notify the police and then let people know what's going on.
Thank you, Courtney, for the call. I mean, that's something that you don't really hear sometimes law enforcement saying, that you have to get up, be prepared to actually take action yourself. And then that can be really a scary situation. I mean, you're already in quite a scary situation, and then all of a sudden really having to face that fact that you may have to really help yourself out too.
Yes, I mean, it's a sad commentary that that's where we've come to in a general sense in our society. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not something that happens every day,
right?
But it's happening often enough and with a level of frequency that is clearly concerning. And I think folks have to recognize the possibilities. I mean, we hear, people going crazy on an airplane.
Right.
And we know, regretfully, we know what happens. You can't just sit and allow that to happen, and you have to jump up and you have to hit them with a coffee pot, something. You have to do something. Equally, the same applies on solid ground. You have to assess and then make some conscious decisions, because as the police are coming, and they will be coming,
right.
You may have to make decisions to engage before their arrival. And it's just the sad state of where we've come as a community, not as a community in Santa Monica, but as a community collective of people.
As a whole, right,
yes.
Exactly. I have an email here from Caroline. She says, what will be done to ensure the new parks will not become possible staging areas for this type of activity? And I think when she says this type of activity, I think it's in regards to homelessness, I should say, and also to address, and again, she says also to address Santa Monica's related homelessness problem. So, how do we work that within some of the new parks that we have coming on?
Okay. Well, the police department is sensitive to the need for open park space to be a place where people can go and recreate and have fun.
Right.
Equally, we have to understand that the open spaces are exactly that. They're open for all members of the public, and a person's status, whether they're homeless or they have housing, does not preclude their use of the open space. Now, we do talk about purpose, and we do talk about manner, and we do talk about time, and so certainly, you can't set up housekeeping in a park, but you can take a nap on a blanket in a park, and you may not have, and whether or not you have a home or not doesn't drive whether or not that's appropriate for you to do that. So the police department balances its approach against constitutionality versus crime and disorder, because we realize that sometimes there's a level of crime that may be occurring with people who decide to come to the park and they don't want to use the restroom facilities. They come to the park, they don't want to abide by the park rules, things like that. So we address those things. We address those things through the presence of our park rangers. You'll see them out there. They wear tan and green, and they wear identifiers underneath their Santa Monica police patch that says Park Ranger, and they walk through the parks. Most recently, Tongva Park and Ken Genzer Square became part of the Civic Center complex downtown. And what we're looking to do in response is to undertake some actions in the police department as we reorganize to make sure that more of our staff are out in the parks, are visible through the parks, to ensure that there's no crime or disorder that's occurring.
Right.
And is it to keep homeless people out of the park? Absolutely not.
Right.
But it's to make sure that the behaviors that are inconsistent, whether committed by homeless people or people with homes, that those things that are inconsistent with the park rules, those behaviors that are inconsistent with the law, that we enforce appropriately and take the appropriate action relative to those things. But that everyone who would come to the park to enjoy the park gets to do that.
And they get to enjoy, exactly.
Because I'll tell you, Tongva Park is a beautiful park.
It is nice, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
This email is from Bruce. It mentions that traffic is so bad in Santa Monica. Can you do more to can you do more to ticket jaywalkers and cars blocking intersections? Can't you put more people on the street to direct traffic?
Well, that's something that we're working on. We currently have a pilot project where we're using our traffic control staff and our parking enforcement staff during certain select periods to actually go out and help to manage traffic and to move traffic along, particularly in our extremely congested downtown.
Right.
But again, we have to be thoughtful. Enforcement isn't the answer to everything.
They want it to be.
They want it to be until, now everybody wants us to enforce until they're the ones getting enforced against.
So you see those lights behind you.
That's the thing. But by the same token, in all seriousness though, we do ticket a lot of jaywalkers because jaywalking is one of the major violations that gives rise to auto pedestrian accidents. So we want to be sure that as we're out there engaging in enforcement, it's done with an eye toward protecting the pedestrian, protecting the motorist. I mean, I couldn't imagine being the motorist who hits a pedestrian or a bicyclist. Exactly. I mean, there's a level of it's just horrifying to think about. But by the same token, I also understand that as we do that, we're going to enforce. Oh, believe me, we do a really good job of that. In the last 90 days, I know we've written over 215 citations to bicyclists.
Right.
So we're out there and we're doing it, and the citations that we issue to bicyclists don't include what we issue to jaywalkers, what we issue to the errant motorist, things like that. But we have to rely also on voluntary compliance. People have to understand the hazard that presents. When they're walking across the street, just stepping out blindly off the curb, texting, talking on the phone, carrying the latte, talking on the phone, texting. I saw a young man the other day who was skateboarding, carrying a cup that of what I can only presume was coffee.
Sure.
And he was texting.
Wow.
And he was skateboarding in the street.
It's a new new definition to multitasking right there.
Exactly.
Totally
Precisely.
new definition of multitasking.
Precisely. But I was looking at that and I was thinking to myself, wow, really?
Yeah.
At what point do we begin to focus on what we're doing? And
Exactly.
so would enforcement have addressed that? No, because nothing he did was a crime.
Sure.
But it was exceedingly foolish.
Exactly.
Particularly since he was rolling down the hill on Pico Boulevard in the 400 block, which if you are familiar with it, it's in front of the high school, and he's coming down to 4th Street, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, really? He stopped at the light, thank goodness. But it's one of those things where enforcement wouldn't have fixed something that isn't broken, but caution, education, helps to bring a new awareness to it.
Caution is key. We have a call on the line.
Really?
Donna,
I'm always excited.
Thanks for holding. Donna, you're on live with Ask the Chief.
Thank you. And first of all, I want to say, Chief, thank you so much for doing a show like this. This is a great opportunity for we, the public, to get to speak with you.
Yes, indeed. Hi, Donna.
Hi. So what I want to know is my 19-year-old son is really interested in law enforcement. I would love for him to be part of the Santa Monica Police Department someday. What do you look for in new hires, and what does he need to do? How does the process work?
Okay, well, for new hires for police officers, he would have to be 20 and a half years old. What we like are folks who have got a little bit of college under their belt if they've finished high school. What he would need to do is be in good physical condition, so no couch potatoing. We have to get out there and engage in a level of rigorous physical fitness. Nothing crazy, but just, good strong physical fitness. Good moral character and fiber. Making sure that, while, everybody's human and there's boo-boos to be made, making sure that the boo-boos aren't significant and life-changing, and just to be, interested in the job, to have an idea about the job. Now, you say your son's 19. I would suggest that he takes a look at our police cadet program. What it is it's 30 hours a week, paid. So it's always a good thing.
Money's good.
Money's good. And let me tell you, the salary's not too bad. I believe the salary range is about $14 to $15 an hour, so it's not bad.
Good, yeah.
30 hours a week. He works in the police department, gets familiar with police systems. We require as part of that he attends college at least on a part-time basis and maintains a 2.0 GPA. And it's a great opportunity to engage and learn more about the career of policing and what it entails. Your son would go through a background investigation. So the process for employment is very similar, not exact, to that which a police officer undergoes. And it's an opportunity to come to work for a fine organization. What more could you ask?
Great. And are you hiring now? Are you always generally hiring?
We are always generally hiring. It takes, you may hear police chiefs talk about and lament the difficulty in finding qualified applicants. There is some truth to that. Not everybody makes it through the process for police officer. In fact, this coming weekend, we'll be doing the physical fitness qualifier for what started off as 1,500 applicants for the police department. We're down to 300 candidates, and we've only gone through one screening. So by the time it's all said and done, if we get, say, 30 candidates that that get fully through the process and we ultimately hire 10, that's about right. So yes, but to answer your question directly, yes, we're actively hiring. It occurs on a cycle. So if your son just missed a cycle, it won't be long before it restarts, and we will accept the application and hold it until the next phase. So I would encourage you to have your son contact our Human Resources Department for the city, fill out a notice card, get an application, and get in line and get in the process.
Great, thank you so much.
You're most welcome.
So just want to remind everybody, thank you so much for that call, Donna. Again, you can call here, CityTV, 310-458-4950 for Ask the Chief. I have this is a quite involved question that I have from Rachel. I know we're going to need to take a break for a little second, so maybe we can ask part one.
Okay,
because this is like a 4-part question. So. Really quickly, if you could tell us where are the most problem locations that have contributed to an increase with the alcohol-related crimes?
Ooh, that's a really good question. And
quickly, though.
Quickly. There's no such thing.
Well,
okay.
you know what? You may need to hold on to that
Then
thought.
let me
so
hold on.
marinate on that for a second.
Okay.
We're going to be right back. We're going to take a short little break with Ask the Chief, and then we'll answer that question. Thanks.
Hey Mom, yes I'm home, saved you some dinner.
Plan now for a major earthquake. Contact the Santa Monica Office of Emergency Management. Don't be caught in the dark.
Even if a signal indicates it's safe to walk, it's never safe unless drivers see you. Last year, 113 pedestrians were injured in Santa Monica. You don't have to go to extremes to get a driver's attention. It just takes a little eye contact. Take the right steps to be safe. Watch the road.
Welcome to our home away from home.
Action.
When I came here, I discovered I could write.
I found the confidence to share my poetry, and now they're songs.
I got away from the trouble in my neighborhood.
Come check us out at the Pico Youth and Family Center.
Join us.
Or volunteer. Together, we can change our world.
That's a wrap.
Hey, slow down!
Right next to the library on 7th Street is the Santa Monica History Museum, where history comes to life for the entire family. Enjoy the exhibits, main gallery, the photo archive, research gallery, and much more. Come visit the Santa Monica History Museum, keeping history alive.
Back to Ask the Chief. Chief, I'm going to reintroduce this question. So this is, again, from Rachel. She's a senior at Cal State University in Northridge, and she's majoring in public communications, public relations and communications. So she has a few questions related about the grant to fight alcohol-related crimes. So what are the most problem locations that have contributed to an increase of alcohol-related crimes?
Well, I think that question requires a tiered response.
Okay.
In part, we have to be thoughtful about those establishments that would serve to minors. And so we have to do a series of checks to be sure that that's not occurring. Mm-hmm. So one of the reasons we recently received a grant from the state was to do exactly that, to make sure that we have alcohol establishments in town, and we do have a significant number, to make sure that they're not serving to minors, because that in itself is an issue. We also have to check those establishments to be sure that they're not serving chronic inebriates or people who are already overserved. So we monitor for that in all of our alcohol establishments. Our Vice Unit goes out and randomly selects businesses to make sure that we are trusting but verifying. Wow. And then equally, we do quite a bit of public intoxication enforcement, and what that ensures is that we don't have people who are out on our streets who just went to the local market and bought alcohol and then just over-imbibed, because those folks can be injured, they can be sick, all kinds of things can befall them. So we want to take them into custody and make sure that they're appropriately cared for, treated, and the like. So it's an array of things. It's no one place that's contributing to our concerns about alcohol beverage service. It's our obligation to make sure that we blanket the city with an enforcement approach and an education approach, because equally, I keep harping on the education component, but we also, our Vice Unit also works with those who would sell alcoholic beverages, particularly in bars and places like that, to make sure that they understand how to identify the chronic inebriate, how to identify and take steps to ensure that they don't overserve folks. What happens if someone does become overly intoxicated? Right. What are their obligations? So we ensure that there's a level of understanding of that. And the grant that we're receiving will help us with all of that.
Oh, okay, excellent. What do you think, or says, do you think getting different schools in Santa Monica involved would help make a difference in alcohol-related crime?
Oh, absolutely. One of the things that I really was very proud of from my time as a police lieutenant was when we had the Every 15 Minutes program. And what that was a program that we took to St. Monica's High School to educate young people about the perils of drinking and driving. And what we do, it's a simulated exercise that really talks about what happens in the aftermath of a crash where teens may be killed or significantly injured. What happens to the loved ones that they leave behind, both at home, at the school, and in their friendship circles. And then it really, it was very a moving experience because the parents were brought in, the families were brought in, and people really got a chance to see the adverse impacts of what alcohol can do when one is drinking and driving. Well, very recently, we've reconstituted that program and implemented it differently and carried it out with Santa Monica High School, and with very positive results where the kids put on the alcohol goggles, drive around in a golf cart through the cones to see how their impairment by just wearing these goggles, which simulate intoxication, what can happen with that. And we have that dialogue. So I think it's important for us to reach out and make sure that young people understand the consequences of alcohol intoxication, drinking and driving, things like that.
And you say the program's every 15 minutes. Is that the statistic, that it happens something like that every 15 minutes? What
it was that every 15 minutes a life is lost to alcohol related circumstances in a driving context.
Got it. What do you plan to do with the $40,000 to help improve alcohol-related crimes?
That's the educational component, being able to go back out to alcohol vendors, whether in the restaurant bar environment, straight bar environment, or in to those places that, those liquor stores and things that sell alcohol, to be sure that the vendors are aware of their obligations, responsibilities, and the like, to responsibly sell alcohol to adults.
Got it. And so have the statistics increased or decreased within the past year of the alcohol-related crimes?
Well, I think it fluctuates. I can't say with a degree of certainty if it's decreased. I would tend to think because we received the grant from the state, we were able to prove that there was an increase and a need in our community. So sometimes it's not so much what the statistics say, it's what's the need.
Right.
And I think with the number of establishments that we have, the ratio of young people that we have, I think it's important that we educate our community about responsible alcohol use.
Okay.
And when that fails,
right,
enforcement is always around the corner.
Yes.
Because we are the police, right?
Right. We have a call. Thomas is on the phone. Thomas, you're on Live with Ask the Chief.
Hello. I was just wondering, do you feel that we are understaffed in our police force, or are we safe enough, or how do you feel about how much police we actually have in our city?
Well, hi. Thank you for calling. I think that we are currently staffed as is appropriate for our bedroom population. And let me explain what I mean by that, because I don't mean to dazzle with Chief Mumbo Jumbo. The police department staffing is generally based upon the resident population in a community. We currently are staffed at 216 police officers, and our resident bedroom community number is somewhere between 88,000 and 90,000. So that's an appropriate number for that. Now, I realize that with our visitor population, there are times when we have as many as, 250, 500,000 visitors on any given day during, the summer or during our peak periods, which seem to be almost all the time these days. And we have force multipliers for how we address that. There is no way that on a daily basis we could upstaff the police department to accommodate for that large of a population influx. That would require that we have a police department, say, of at least 500 to 600 police officers, and there's no way that level of saturation is appropriate for a city that is 8 square miles. So what we do is we utilize overtime, and sometimes that's a horrifying thing for people in the public to hear, but it's much more cost effective to do that and to do so reasonably. Where it's appropriate, we certainly pass the costs of policing on to entities when we have special events like GLOW or we have special events like the marathon. So those are paid for differently. So in essence, to get right to the heart of it and answer your question, I believe that we're appropriately staffed for a bedroom population. I think that there's a number of things that we could do to, and are doing in our undertaking, let me be clear about that, to enhance our ability to provide for public safety services here in town without necessarily increasing the number of police officers that we have. And by that I mean we also have 55% of our police department is civilian personnel, and there's a number of functions that the police department carries out that are more appropriately carried out by that 55% of the organization. So the balance, our police officers, our 45% police officers can go out and do the public safety function of fighting crime, the fear of crime, and disorder.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're most welcome.
I have a couple more emails here.
Okay.
So as we're waiting for our callers to call in, what makes working Santa Monica Police Department different than working in any other police department? Especially, you were at another police department.
Yes, I was. Well, now having the benefit of having worked for a state policing agency, the Santa Monica Police Department, another police department as police chief, and then being assigned on a long-term assignment with a county sheriff's department, I think what makes Santa Monica just a wonderful place is the people.
Right.
The people.
All right.
And the people. I think it's great. I think, you know, there are commonalities when you're talking about fighting crime. Those commonalities transcend communities. When you talk about extending a service orientation, I think we do that very, very well. I think the fact that we are a sophisticated community, we have a sophisticated police department, we are technologically savvy, we are technically savvy, we are just savvy. So I think at the end of the day, what makes us unique is just our approach. We are very collaborative. We work very well with our city partners. We work very well with our external partners, private sector, etc. It is not just, you know, the police department's way or the highway kind of thinking. We don't operate in a silo. So I think that willingness to self-examine and also to participate in collaborative partnerships really puts us in a different category altogether than some of my other experiences.
Gotcha. Well, you mentioned that generally that the police department is usually generally hiring. And so what are you actually looking for in some of the future candidates or for people that want to work for SMPD?
I'm looking for that person who likes people, but is nosy as all get out. And that sounds kind of strange, but I say it to say this. In order to be effective as a police officer, you have to be curious. You have to have an innate curiosity. And it kind of goes like this. And I'm oversimplifying, but I think it's important because I think it'll resonate differently. I'm driving down the street and I'm a police officer and I see something that looks out of the ordinary. I need to be curious about it. I need to go, what is that about? Who's doing that? Who are those people? Why are they there? What are they doing? What are they doing that gives me the right to go and inquire? Or do I just need to park off to the side and kind of keep an eye on it? I need people who are inquisitive by nature, who are somewhat fearless, but appropriately so. I'm looking for people who have the capacity to learn, because we're always learning. I learn something new every day. Some days I'm amazed at what I've learned, and other days I'm horrified. Sometimes I'm alternately amazed and horrified at the same scenario. But open to learning, literally and figuratively. I'm looking for people who bring a diverse background to the table. I want, you know, it used to be that you want people who were in criminal justice, had their degrees in criminal justice and this and that. And people ask me, well, what do you think about that? And I say, well, that's nice, but I want the person who has the degree in French literature. I want the person who comes to us, maybe they were a sous chef, you know, we're talking about cooking at the break. People who have a diversity of experiences, because it is that diversity of experience that will help them to better relate to the changing community that we're serving. I want them to have an affinity for police work, because it's a unique business on a lot of fronts, but I want them to have an affinity for that, but also to have a life outside of it.
Got it.
Well-traveled, well-educated, well-spoken, in physical condition. I'm not asking much, right?
No, it's a complete, whole, well-rounded individual that we're looking for. Yeah, so I mean, that's...
When are you going to apply?
Ooh, here we go. Let me go on to my next question. So, because you mentioned physical stuff, and I'm not ready to do that yet. So, we know that we've talked a lot about the community at hand and how youth are really, we touched on a little bit that being one of your priorities. youth being valuable assets in this community. And so we have great outstanding programs, one of them being the Police Activities League.
Of which you have no bias, right?
Me? No, none whatsoever.
Okay.
And so I just wanted to touch really quick on some of the these PAL and other youth programs that provide safe places for youth after school and have great after school programs. How important is that with officers and their involvement and interaction with youth? I
think for police officers to have an involvement and engagement, an active engagement with the future of our community is essential. I think it does quite a few things. We get a benefit by demystifying the mystique of the police. There is nothing more gratifying that when I visit PAL and the kids go, "Oh, I saw you, oh, you're the chief who was on the skateboard the other day,"
right.
And while I don't get to PAL every day, when I do go, the opportunity to talk to young people and see what's resonating with them, what are they thinking, it keeps me fresh. And I think that that's important for our officers to be kept fresh about what's going on with young people. Demystifying the role, as I said, of our position. To be able to explain what we do, because television portrays that much of what we do in a realistic sense.
Right.
To make sure that young people understand this is a good career. It's a good career option, and the police are your friend.
I knew you were going to say that.
You knew I was going to say that. Because you know what? A lot of times, I'll be somewhere and I'll be in uniform and I'll hear somebody, a parent generally, tell their kid, "See, there's that police lady over there, and if you do bad," and I want to say, no. That's not the message. The message should be, there's that police lady or that policeman over there, and they're your friend, and if you ever need help, they're the people you need to call, and they're going to come.
And they're going to come, and they're going to help you.
And they're going to help you.
That's so key.
That's so key. And so the interactions that the police officers have help to knock down some of that negative messaging and replace it with something favorable. And it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing. And plus, it brings out my inner child, and I love it. And I think, it makes us all better when we're interacting with kids.
Exactly. Oh, we do have a call. We have Gary. Gary on the line.
Hi, Chief Seabrooks. This is Gary.
Hi, Gary.
My car was broken into around Santa Monica College, so and I feel like I've joined a group where I hear from other people that their cars have been broken into. What is the city doing to try to fix that?
Well, I'll tell you what the police department is trying to do to fix that. We engage in aggressive enforcement. We operate surveillance projects at points in time in those areas that we know have been hard hit by auto burglaries. And then we have we're developing a new educational campaign, and it's called Lock It or Lose It. Because what we find, and I'm not saying this is the case with you, but what we find is a lot of times people are not thoughtful about what they leave on the seats of their car, what they leave visible in their car. So what ends up happening is the crime of opportunity happens. I look in, I see an iPad on the seat. I'm inclined to be a crook, so I break the window and I take it. Maybe I see a purse or a bag or a wallet. And we want people to be thoughtful about not leaving items in the car. Equally, what we found is, quite frankly, our car burglars target rental cars. And how do they know? Because when you go to a rental car company and you get a car, there's a little barcode tag on the window, and it just screams out, "Hi, I just rented this car." And what do people usually do? They put their items in the trunk. And a trunk can be defeated and items stolen. So what we're doing is engaging in a large-scale public safety campaign to let people know to secure their property, don't leave it inside the car, visible, lock it in the trunk before you get to your destination. Don't leave, even inconsequential items. I mean, a lot of times we leave, a lot of loose change in what used to be the ashtray.
Right.
Or in the what do you call it, the cup holder.
Yeah.
We'll leave, $5 for parking meters and things like that. Well, for somebody who's looking for something, that's an opportunity, and they'll think nothing about breaking into the car. So what we're encouraging people to do is
quickly, Chief, because we got to wrap up. I got like 2 seconds.
Okay, I'm talking real fast. What we're encouraging people to do is to make sure that they don't leave items of value out and about to make themselves the accidental victim. We're also engaging in surveillance activities and enforcement activities because we understand that that's an emerging problem.
Okay, thank you, caller. And basically, that's our show. Thank you, Chief Seabrooks, for joining us. We really appreciate it. That's all the time we have today. And make sure you join us again for Ask the Chief on Thursday, November 14th at 4 p.m. Until then, I'm Eula Fritz, and thank you for watching.